Hey, what's going on, everybody? Steve here, Rake and Profit over at rakeandprofit.com. Coming back to you with another video.
Don't you love how he does that? .com.
And I'm really excited to have my good friend Dominic with the
Primetime Treasure Hunter
YouTube channel. And today we're going to be talking about selling comic books on eBay. And we're going to give you guys a bunch of beginner tips and tricks for being able to buy comics and flip them on eBay for a profit. So, Dominic, why don't you introduce yourself to the people and tell everybody, how did you get started selling comic books? Why do you sell comic books? And why do you feel that people who are watching should, get into selling comic books for a profit?
Yeah, if you could get the right deal and you could get them in bulk, it is a great way to make a very significant return on your investment. I mean, I'm talking many thousands of dollars for a couple $100 purchase, if you make the right deal. It does take some time, but if you like it and you enjoy the characters and you enjoy the stories, it's a lot of fun. In terms of how I got into it, actually from collecting Masters of the Universe figures when I was younger, because in the back of the figure there would be a little mini comic book, and so I started reading those, and then when I got to the store and there were bigger ones, I started buying those and collecting them, and then I started taking them when I was a teenager to the Englishtown auction in New Jersey and selling off my extras and making money, basically flipping back then, at an outside flea market.
Interesting.
And then I sold my collection when I was younger to get a Sega Genesis, which was the stupidest mistake that I ever made. Then I had kids, and I told my kids about all the comic books that I had, and they were mad at me because I sold them all off. So I started to try to rebuild my collection, and I did. And as I started doing that, I started to see how much money some people who were comic book dealers were making flipping comic books, and how much money and return on investment they're getting when they were purchasing big collections. So I said to myself, I want to start doing that too, and that's how I started getting back into it, and that branched me out into also doing all sorts of other reselling as well.
Cool, awesome. Yeah. So I've got a ton of questions.
Okay.
This is like the most exciting video.
I'm pumped up.
We're shooting a bunch of videos today, so if you're not subscribed to his YouTube channel and my YouTube channel, be sure to subscribe. Links below, because we have a bunch of videos. But I'm really excited for this video because you don't hear a lot of people in the reselling space talking about selling comic books. And I've always had this feeling that, like, when I've seen them at garage sales or thrift stores, that they're not worth much money. So why don't you break down maybe some of my limiting beliefs, and maybe for some of the people watching, and share maybe some success stories of comic books maybe that you have, that you purchased, flipped, just because it's like, I'm in the video, but I'm like, I don't know if I really believe this. Can you really make money? Is it worth it? Because I don't want to flip comic books to make $2, $3 profit.
No, right. Again, the key is purchasing them in bulk, okay? If you're seeing like 5, 6 comic books at a garage sale, you're most likely correct that they're probably not worth something, unless you had specialized knowledge about a certain issue. Like, for example, Steve, if you happen to find this one, which you probably won't, laying at a garage sale, this is Amazing Spider-Man number 238. It happens to be the first appearance of the Hobgoblin. Now, what many people don't know is inside of this book, there are some tattoos that you could remove to put on your skin. It's very hard to find the tattoos in here. If you find the tattoos on the back flap, which this one has it in there, this makes this about a $200 comic book.
$200 for this little
$200 for this one comic book. Yes. Now, once in a while, Steve, you can find and get lucky and find a comic book that's worth a lot for a buck or two. I did that once in an estate sale where I found the Amazing Spider-Man number 300, which is the first appearance of a character called Venom. It has art in it by Todd McFarlane, who's very popular and well known in pop culture. That book wound up selling for over $600, not professionally graded or certified.
And you paid how much?
I paid $1 for it. Now,
$1 is $600 selling Venom.
$1, right? And I just lumped it together with a whole bunch of other things that were there during the sale. But primarily, what you want to do if you really want to make money and you're just starting out in it is you want to try to invest in what I would call a relatively small collection. Now, this might not sound small to you and to the viewers, but I'm talking 1,000 comic books or less.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Because what your goal is to source them for about 15 cents a piece, 10 to 20
That's
cents.
Cheap.
Right, but the only way you're going to get that is if you buy them in bulk. So, for example, what you're going to find is if you're going to buy these collections, you're going to find them in these boxes here, okay? So
you want to pick one up for the viewers?
Sure, absolutely. So we have 2 types of boxes, and the lingo that they are used to refer to them is this is what's called a short box, and this is what's called a long box.
I might have to lift it up. I don't know if people
absolutely.
Can see it.
Okay, no problem. So this is the short box right here. You can see it's mostly full. In general, if the comic books inside of it are bagged and boarded for protection, So there's a little backing board on the back so it doesn't get damaged, and a little plastic over it. That adds some thickness, and there will be about 135 to 140 in there.
Wow.
Without that, it'd be about maybe 200 or so. Maybe a little bit more. Now this is the long box, so there's a lot more in here. It's much heavier, as you know from carrying it out, right? You tell people how heavy this thing is.
50, 60 pounds
Right.
probably.
Yeah, and it takes up a lot of space, and this is the reason why a lot of people just want to get rid of it at a certain point, because it's hard to move and that sort of stuff. But if they are bagged and boarded, this will fit about 275 comic books. Without bags and boards on them, it'll fit about 400. So you could use that to estimate how much you would pay for a collection. So if you had like 2 boxes that didn't have bags and boards on, that's about 800 comics. And maybe you toss in a short box, that's about 1,000 books. So you want to pay around $150 for it. The only way you're going to get it for that, again, is $150 might sound like a lot to somebody, but that's good for the person who's selling it. They're getting $150 and they're just blowing all this out. But the chances that you could just buy this one small box by itself for 15 cents a piece, that's probably not going to happen. So that's why I'm saying you have to buy a bigger amount. Now you could do it with 600, 700, but if you're starting out, try to keep it at 1,000 or less, because then worst case scenario, even if you made a mistake, you could blow them out at your own garage sale for 50 cents a piece, $1, something like that, and you still make your money back.
So Dominic's talking about buying in bulk, buying a lot at one time in order to get it for a cheap price. Now the question I have for you, you're selling it on eBay.
Yeah.
You're selling these comic books on eBay. Now, are you buying bulk because you're selling in bulk as well? Or are you buying in bulk just to get it cheap and then you're selling off individually? So are you selling in like one at a time? Are you selling lots of 10? Obviously, if you find Venom or any like of these crazy rare ones, you're going to sell those individually. But what's your strategy when you get a lot of 1,000? You're paying your 15 cents each.
Yeah.
How does that kind of split off?
That's a very good question, and it really is going to depend on the book. So, for example, like the one I just showed you, that one's going to be sold individually. You're not going to lot it together, but you're going to have a lot of comic books that they are not worth much individually, and they're not worth putting up individually. It's not worth the time. It's not worth the money that you're going to get back. So what you want to do, if you had like 10 or 15 or 20, is you want to lot those up together and just sell them as one lot. Now, it would be preferable if you had a continuous run of the books, like let's say in terms of issue number 15, 16, 17, 18, because people like a continuous story and you could sell it that way. People will buy mixed lots, but it's better if you have a continuous
So you want to keep
run.
a theme.
You want to keep a theme, and you could cross into different books where the same character might be in separate books, or it might be, you have like the Joker in another book and then Batman in another book, and you might want to keep DC together in terms of the publisher, or Image is another, so you could be creative in terms of how you do it.
Now I'm curious, can anybody sell comic books, or someone like myself? I'm very uneducated when it comes to comics and characters and themes. I never really grew up watching that. I was mostly into sports, so if I was to look through all these, I probably wouldn't know who any of the characters are. So how important is that knowledge when it comes to flipping comic books for a profit on eBay?
Yeah, I mean, the knowledge is definitely important, but it's like any other niche that you're trying to break into. I mean, you develop that knowledge over time. You learn by watching haul videos. You're right that in the reselling community, there's not really someone out there who does a lot with comic book flipping besides myself, but there is a whole separate comic book community on YouTube that is dedicated to doing comic book haul videos, and they'll go out and they'll go score comic books somewhere like a comic shop or something like that, and then they'll come back and they'll do an unboxing, very much similar to what we do, but they're kind of segued off separately from us. But you should watch those, and that's a great way to get education and knowledge.
So selling comic books on eBay, is that something that resellers should add to their arsenal, or is that something that actual resellers are doing full time? Could you actually make a full time income off of that? I know full time income is going to be different for everyone. That might be $2,000, it could be $5,000, it could be $10,000. But what type of income potential do you see with comic books in general? I know it's kind of a bad question, but
yeah, well, I do think that even amongst comic book dealers, Steve, and this is the great thing about comic books, is that it crosses into many different areas. So, for example, toys. There's a lot of Marvel-related toys and action figures and posters, and there's comic art, and there's lithographs, and there's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of merchandising. So it's very rare that someone would just sell comic books. They're gonna, in fact, someone who I know who has a local comic book store, the number one thing he actually sells on eBay, even though he has comic books up, is he sells the toys more than the comics.
Wow.
So but you usually do a combination too. But like I said, like you could pick up a lot of comics for $150, and you could wind up flipping it for $4,000 or $5,000.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
So where would you recommend people go to be able to source comic books? Is it going to be thrift stores? Because I don't really see comic books at thrift stores often.
Nope.
Every now and then.
They're not there, rarely.
I've seen small lots at garage sales.
Yep.
I would guess, based on my experience, that you're going to want to be looking locally. So probably either putting out wanted ads on Craigslist or just sourcing Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you could go to 1,000 garage sales and it would be extremely unusual and rare to find like a whole collection of comic books there. But I will say, and this goes for other topics as well, other things you're interested in, if you don't see what it is you like at a garage sale or sometimes an estate sale, ask them. Ask them if they have it. I can't tell you how many times I've actually gotten boxes of comics because I said, do you have comic books? And they say, actually, I do have some in the house. They're in the basement, but I didn't think to bring them out. So I've gotten a lot.
Dominick's heart is pounding.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I ask that question. I'll ask 100 times, and I might get 5, 6, 7 hits.
Yeah.
And some of them might turn out. But the main way I source my collections is by putting ads on Craigslist that say that I'm looking to buy comic books. I'm looking to buy them in bulk. I specify I am not going to purchase them for retail prices. That I buy them, like I said, in
wholesale,
bulk.
Sure.
And I say, hey, is your collection overwhelming your house? Do you need to liquidate? Are you moving? Do you need quick cash?
Yeah.
And that's what motivates people to reach out to me. I will tell you though, if you set up that type of ad, that there are going to be a lot of people who send you stuff that is junk, and I've got to sift through a lot of junk and a lot of bad stuff to get to the collection. That's the awesome one that I know I could really flip.
But then you find it, and it's all worth it because that could pay you dividends for years. Like for example, you were telling me before the video that. And sorry, I don't remember who it was, but this girl has paid you a lot of money over time.
Yeah. Let's see if we can find her in here. Her name is Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose. Here she is, right here, Steve. We got to make sure she's appropriate for the viewers. So she is. She's
demonetized.
Demonetized. So I'm gonna get Steve kicked off of YouTube here. But this is the Tarot Witch right here, and a lot of these books, sometimes they came with lithographs on the back that were signed by the author. Ooh. And I'm routinely selling these, sometimes even with just basic prints on the back. With a signature on them for $20 to $30 a book, and you're sourcing them for 15 cents or less. And sometimes people are buying multiple. Use global shipping, by the way, because I can't tell you how many people are wanting to buy multiples of these books and spend $60, $80, $100 buying Tarot Witch of the Black Rose. So that's another strategy, by the way, is to try to put, like, if you're going to put several issues of these up, put them up around the same time so people could buy multiples of them if you want to.
Now I'm curious, great tip. How do you determine the value of a comic book? Now, obviously, if you're watching this channel, hopefully you have a little bit of knowledge in terms of using the sold listings, but what are you looking for? How important is condition? How important are the colors and the themes and so on and so forth? Yeah,
well, in terms of looking them up, you're right. You would just do it the way you normally would. The best way to actually look them up is not some secret comic book website. It actually is on eBay, because eBay is telling you the real, true market value of it. If you go to a comic book price guide, that's going to tell you some static value that hasn't changed, and it's not necessarily
it's not really
realistic.
Giving you a pulse on the market.
Absolutely not. And so it could be very misleading. Sometimes it's spot on, but sometimes not. So you definitely want to check the completed solds. Now, in terms of condition, that is the driving factor, the main driving factor that's going to affect the value of the book, all things being equal with it.
Sure.
So that's what you've got to know that. And what I would suggest is Overstreet makes a great, it's a great little softcover book called Guide to Grading Comic Books, and it gives all examples of what the different grades are: near mint, very fine, fine, very good, good, all those sorts of things. It gives lots of examples with tons of pictures that you could go through, and that will help you learn the grading system, because that's very important. Now, one thing, Steve, is that people ask me this, is that can you put the comic book up and say, put no grade on it? You could. You got to take a lot of pictures. You'll lose some buyers that way, potentially, but you could just be honest, say, I'm not a professional grader. I'm just putting these pictures out.
I just found them in my attic.
You judge for yourself, and you could do that. But again, you'll lose a few people. But it's more, if that's how you're at that point, that's what you got to do.
Cool, awesome tips. Let's talk a little bit about shipping comics. Let's just say that you find yourself a bunch of comics, and you've got some money on your hands. Now you've sold maybe one. Let's just go with one, because that's a good example here.
Sure.
What do we got right here? Is this a comic packaged up?
Yeah, this is. I brought this with me as just a standard example to show you what you would do. which is you want to make sure that you get some thick pieces of cardboard, and you can see on the side here that they have some corrugation to it.
Where do you get that?
So,
you just cutting off a box?
This is actually a Walmart box that was shipped to me, where they shipped me some bubble wrap in it. But a lot of times what I do is I go to a grocery store and I get the bread box. And so that's a little secret tip there. Go to the bread area, and those boxes are nice and thick and strong. I actually have an example one in there, but and I just cut them up, and I use these as protection. And it's basically a sandwich technique where you are putting the comic book in between these two thick boards. Again, they have to be thick. Like if you're going like this with it and it's bending, you can't have feel that. Like try to go like that, and you should not. You should feel resistance.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You have to feel resistance, so it can't be flimsy. And then what you want to do is you want to tape the sides all around, because you don't want the corners to jut out and get damaged. So you need to make sure you leave some margin.
It's a little thicker.
Yeah, you have to leave some margin around. There shouldn't be anything peeking out at all. And then once it's taped like that, you just simply stick it in the envelope like this, and then you're gonna tape your flap over and go like this. If it's a bigger lot like that, you could do the same type of thing. You're just gonna have a bigger sandwich, and you might want to also cut some strips along the side and tape them onto the side to protect the sides of the books. And you could put those actually in a little box.
So this is first class mail?
First class mail.
Right. Less than 16?
Yeah.
Less than 16 ounces.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Pretty easy, pretty cheap to ship out. Obviously, if you're doing a bulk sale, I'm sure you're probably going to follow somewhat of the same principles, just on a larger scale, put it in a bigger box, maybe use some void fill or some bubble.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And last but not least, because we've covered so much information in this video, if you guys have more questions, again, check out his YouTube channel, which is
Primetime Treasure Hunter.
Let's share some of these things, because we got some cool things in front of us. I know we already talked about this, but what do you have here?
Well, this, Steve, sometimes when you go and you get comic book collections, or you're going to a house of a collector, you'll also see other things that aren't exactly comic books, but they're kind of related in some way, because there's a lot of cross interest. And this happens to be, and you know these very well, Mama Profits picks up some of these. These are the Dungeons and Dragons books.
I these things. Money all day long.
Hey, listen, I'm going to tell you all a real secret tip here, okay? Anytime you see those initials, TSR, pick that up. It's a role-playing game book company, and man, especially if it's from the 80s or the 70s, like this one's from the 1970s, they just sell really well, even if they're damaged. I mean, they'll still sell damaged, because they're hard to find. And so
I want to scan this for Amazon while you're talking. I want to see if it's on Amazon, because you're mostly eBay, right?
Yeah, mostly eBay. So the price on Amazon are probably even a little bit higher for it. So pick those sorts of things up. I don't know if you want me to show you some of the other things here while you're looking that up. Or
$38 used on eBay. If this was new, it's over $130.
Yeah. So I actually Steve, I just purchased 2 big pallets full, even more than 2 pallets full, of comic books that actually came out of a storage unit that had all sorts of Dungeons and Dragons in it, Japanese anime movies. I sold one of the anime movies for $82.50.
What'd you pay for the whole lot?
I bought the whole lot for $4.50. I've sold 8 DVDs and 1 book. I've made, with taking all the fees out and all the shipping, $275.
You sick dog.
Absolutely. That's slaughtering it, Raking Profits. That's slaughtering it right there.
Smashing a deal. That's crazy.
That's great. I mean, I walk out to the garage, I still have all these pallets, and I'm like, this is crazy. I'm going to make it all back in just
And how'd you locate that deal?
That was through the Craigslist ad. So
these wanted ads, because our videographer right here, big shout out to Zach. You guys can't see him, but his brother does a lot of these wanted ads as well.
Yeah.
And he gets these calls of these toys. He mostly focuses on toys.
Yeah.
I don't know what he sold the other day, but it was something worth like $2,000, and he paid like $5 or something.
Yeah, well, what happened is the guy who sold me, that's actually a couple, is they just started getting into purchasing storage units. And so they purchased the storage unit online. They didn't know what was in it. It was filled with all these comic books. They know nothing about comics, so they get home, they go into Craigslist, they type in comic books, my ad pops up, it's big and flashy and all this sort of stuff. They send me an email, they say, hey, we've got all these books, would you be interested in them? I said, sure, send me some pictures, back and forth. Next thing you know, I'm driving 85 minutes to go and pick up this collection, filled up the Primetime Treasure Mobile.
Oh, man, filled it up.
It was crazy, and finally I got home with it, unloaded it all on those pallets.
So hopefully this video motivated you guys. There's all types of stuff we have here. If you're not following me on Instagram at Rake and Profit, or on Dominick's Instagram as well, which is
Prime_time_treasure.
Be sure to be following us on Instagram as well, because we're sharing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff of this video as it goes live. But yeah, hopefully this motivated, inspired, and educated you in terms of flipping comic books for profit on eBay. I didn't realize there was so much money to be made, and I know for a fact now I'm going to keep my eye out. I learned a lot about the boxes, estimating how many are in there, valuing it, conditions, how to determine value, what sells well. So if you guys enjoyed this video, do us a big favor and smash that like button down below. Again, subscribe to us for more videos. And anything else you'd like to say?
No, just, the only other thing is just, consider it as a possibility in terms of getting into, dabble in a little bit, see if it's for you, and, try it out, experiment, diversify, but don't go too far into it and make too big of an investment, because then you might make a mistake.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Keep up picking and making the money. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.